There we go. I'm gonna go ahead and keep continuing there. As everyone's starting to come in. A few things. Mary, we recorded the first initial part. I'll make sure that I email this all or email the meeting out that we were talking about. Some of this you probably already know with like as far as having Rambler and things like that. So
Yeah, I mean, I went through a whole semester, so it was like baptism by fire.
that's what I was gonna say.
The basics.
What we were actually just talking about, we're talking about the syllabus and some of the requirements that have to be on it. And now let me go pull this back up. Sorry, I'm a little discombobulated. Up there it is, calendar. Richie actually pointed out, just to kind of give you an idea of the differences. If someone is dropping a class, when you're dropping a class, that means it will not show up on your transcript. After the 13th of January, students cannot drop a class. And they'll contact you. They may say, hey, I want to drop your class, and it's January 31st. They're not really going to try to drop the class. They're going to be trying to withdraw from the class. There is a difference because the withdrawal actually shows up as a W on their transcripts. It's still not really detrimental to the students to withdraw. There's some differences, but they just need to be aware that a withdrawal is different than a drop. And I think that's the big thing. Students can actually add classes sometimes with your permission, with late approvals up until the 20th of this coming semester. I think the add drop regular is the 13th, and then they have until the 20th if you're willing to allow someone to add your class. So, and let me pull this back up here. But that's kind of the long and short of it. One thing I would strongly recommend on your syllabus is to make sure that you have the last date of withdrawal, which I believe is, and I should know this because I just did it. There it is, March the 10th. Last date for a full withdrawal from the semester. You really should have that on your syllabus. Okay. Because it just gives students the full information on whether they need to get out of your class or not, or if there's something up or they come and talk to you. I should probably ask this though. Is there anyone teaching a 7-week class? Okay. I was going to say they have an earlier date, but if no one's doing a 7-week class, you should be fine. So that last date is the 10th. And let me jump back here. Whoops. There's also other things, incompletes. You are able to give incompletes to students if you, in certain situations, that is actually, I'm going to make this very simplistic. It's really your call on a lot of aspects of it. Maybe you have a student who the last week or two, they're in a, God forbid, some sort of accident or something, and they just weren't able to get the work done, and you want to work with them. You can give them an incomplete. It's an I, and you'll do that in Rail. If you do that, they have to have the work completed no later than the next semester, at the end of the next semester. But you probably, well, you can set up an earlier due date. And I would definitely not make it the last day of the next semester, because you're going to get emails from the registrar about needing to complete getting the incomplete removed. So incompletes to me are usually in unique situations, but you do have that option. So, and an incomplete fail is like someone who might get an incomplete but hasn't been coming to class, or you've kind of lost contact with them or anything like that. So I would say you might do these in unique situations though. Any questions about anything on here? Just make sure you have that withdrawal date, the 13th on there, the March 13th date. Few other things just to make sure that everyone's on the same page. We have different types of classes that are being offered. And it sounds like we got a wide variety. Mary, I know we kind of mentioned this with the other. What type do you usually do live classes?
Yes. This semester, though, the class size is very different from what it was last semester in both of my classes. So we're going to incorporate a little bit of Zoom too. So I hope that answers your question.
No, it does.
It's not a hybrid, but there are going to be a few classes that are by appointment only on Zoom.
Okay. Usually the types of delivery methods we have live, which it sounds like some of you are going to be doing. That's a class that has an established time. You're going to meet. That's how it works. Hybrids, usually a mix of live and online. Synchronous, I know our online instructors, are you all doing synchronous classes or are you doing asynchronous classes? Do you know?
Synchronous.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I'll be doing synchronous.
You're doing synchronous, so you have an established time, you're gonna meet. Okay, awesome. I don't know if I know she was having trouble hearing us. Oh, there it is.
I have no clue.
You don't know if you're synchronous or asynchronous?
Nope.
Well, you know what? Let's look for you right now, because this will kind of go right into what we need to see anyway. Anytime you need to see anything related to your schedule, you're going to go to class schedule, and you're doing social work, right? Or nutrition.
Right, nutrition.
Nutrition. I think that might be asynchronous, but let's look.
They haven't put anything in any of my classes.
Oh, well, here we go. Do you see your class there? Nutrition.
The second one there, Carol
Right
Reed.
there. Yep, you're asynchronous, which means you do not have an established meeting time.
Okay,
So you'll do it week to week. You should have a class that's set up. I would definitely talk to your department chair a little bit about how they like to set those up.
Yeah.
But
me
that
too,
is a
me
class-
too,
I'd say that one, yeah.
me too.
Because it doesn't have a meeting time. Now, that's not to say asynchronous is not, it's not an independent study. It's something where you're just going to set, there should be some rhythm to it. Like an example I use, I teach an asynchronous education technology class. And my students, I have like about a 10-minute video, 15-minute video a week that I record. It's always posted up on Monday morning. They have 3 things they have to do: a discussion board, a blog, and an assignment. And most weeks that's how they do it. And it's a rhythm, and they know it's going to be up. They have the week to get it done, and then we move on to the next thing. We just don't have an actual honest to goodness meeting time. And that's what it looks like your class is going to be for nutrition. But again, I'd check with your chair as far as like getting that, how they do it. And Dr. Fletcher's really good. I think she's done that class a lot on asynchronous. You might even want to touch base with her.
Yes, yes, I think she's gonna talk to us on Friday.
Okay. So,
but
and all.
I know very little right now.
Well, I was going to say one thing with the asynchronous, and I believe, and Richie probably he would know this better than I. One thing we've had some issues with asynchronous before, that really is a class without a meeting time. And we've had some professors who have had it listed as, they said, well, we're going to meet on Wednesday at 4:00. And it could be optional, but it's not, it can't be part of the class because that's not how the class is being advertised.
Well, that can't be required.
There you go. Now,
Oh.
if it's the synchronous class, you have an established meeting time.
Right.
That's it. So
But these are asynchronous.
yours is an asynchronous. Anytime you see that OLA,
Okay.
that's an asynchronous. And anytime you see the OLS, that's one with a time.
Okay,
And actually, let me pull that back up for you real quick. Because actually there's a few on here. If you look, most of those are all asynchronous, but there's one right there with Dr. Fletcher that's a live class. It has a meeting time right there.
okay.
And then actually they're all, other than that, let me pull up one more just to kind of show you. Actually, I'm going to pull up business just because I think they have a wide variety of classes. Of course, now I can find it. Let's just do econ. I see it there. As you can see, they have, like, if you see something that's listed like this, you might be teaching. That's a hybrid style class because it has a
Right.
meeting time, but it also has an online option. These are all asynchronous. And you see some there, and then there's some, looks like most of theirs, up there's one that's just a regular meeting time. But as long as everyone knows the delivery method, that's really the primary thing. And again, touch base with your chairs. And I didn't mention this person either. And I know this as an adjunct. A lot of times your lifeblood with your department, especially if you're busy during the day, is your administrative assistants in the departments. Make sure that you touch base and introduce yourself to them, whether you're on campus or not, because there's someone that can really help you out. They can provide your copy codes. Sometimes they can make copies for you if you can't get on campus on time. A lot of times they'll keep you in the loop with any type of departmental things that you need to know. Because they're here all the time. They kind of have their finger on the pulse and they're dealing with things. So definitely reach out to your administrative assistants too. Sometimes that's the person you want to contact right off the bat if you're trying to reach somebody directly and you can't. So, but those are all the times. Anyone have any other questions on your delivery methods for your classes? Yeah, go ahead, Mary.
So if my plan was to occasionally, instead of meeting in person, have individual appointments by Zoom, is that permissible in the same time slot?
Were you going to say something, Richie? Go ahead.
No, I think what Jason is saying is that if you're teaching an asynchronous course, you cannot require students to meet at a specific time. You can ask when it works for them, but you can't say it's an asynchronous course and we're going to meet or even take a test or an exam at 4 o'clock. You can
Yeah.
only take the exam on Tuesday between 4 and 6. That's
Right,
not
my
considered
courses are
asynchronous.
live.
Yeah, you can do, right,
Oh,
you
perfect.
can work with them around that time. Sometimes they may want to meet some other time. You can do all of that with this.
Okay.
It's really, you have a lot more flexibility if it's not asynchronous.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand.
I
Thank
was
you.
going to say, when you're live and when you have the live classes, it's just, you're going to establish that right off the bat. So it's not something, and actually the last week or two of the semester, I had someone from Washington County that wanted to come and speak to my live class. Well, he couldn't get here. The time wasn't perfect. So he could get here a half an hour earlier, but he had to leave a half an hour before the end of the class. I just emailed my class. I told him, listen, if you can get here on a half an hour early, that would be fantastic. If you can't, no big deal. And we just rolled with it from there. And that was no big deal. So.
Got it. And I guess you could have also maybe done it by Zoom, right? That would have been also something permissible, because that's another thought, is that I've got some visitors that I want to speak, but they're not in West Virginia. So, we might do one visitor via Zoom at the same time period.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
I
Richie.
do that. I have 4 speakers that are coming from all over the country for my capstone course. And it's set up during the time, and they're willing to Zoom in during Eastern time, even if they're not in Eastern time.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, and Mary, just to kind of chime in on that too, I have a social studies methods class. My students go out in the field. So even though I have a live class, when they're out in the field, there's about a 2-week period. We actually just meet online because it's just they're trying to get from school and it's too crazy because some of them are in counties that are in Frederick or Loudoun County and things like that. And they can't get back to campus on time, especially if that's where they're kind of housed. So, and I'm sorry. And Dr. Gash, I want to make sure I'm saying your name right. I did not actually say, how do you pronounce your name? I don't want to butcher it.
So my first name is Pinata with the K.
Okay. So,
You'll never forget it.
okay. Pinata. So what was your question, ma'am?
First of all, I'm loving Steve's cat. Hi, cat. My question is, and I'm not sure if I'm getting ahead of you, and if I am, I do apologize.
Honestly, this session is just to help you all out because a lot of times you're kind of depending on the times. So ask it.
So my question is, because I'm doing a synchronous class, is there a particular link I'm looking for, or like how am I getting to the actual classroom? Is that through Brightspace or?
That, and you might, again, I think Lee or someone had asked something similar to this, or Steve might have. It's
Okay.
kind of up to you and your department how you want to set that up.
Okay.
We do have Teams, but if you prefer Zoom, I would talk to your department chair about maybe a Zoom account. We don't have a hard, fast rule about how you meet as far as like your delivery method. You just need to make sure that you have one that's consistent, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So you do have Teams, and I tell you what, the last part of this, like the last 45 minutes or so or hour, I've kind of just left for if anyone has Brightspace questions or technology questions. I'll pull up our OneDrive and things and show you where Teams is if you want to do that. I don't want to. I'm trying to get better at using Teams. Sometimes Teams some people like it, some people don't. So, and if you're comfortable with it, and I think our students are getting better using it because more and more people are using it, but Are you thinking Zoom?
Well, it doesn't really matter to me. I use Teams through the VA, so I mean, like that's all of our meetings. So I was okay with that, but I didn't
You're a
know.
pro.
I'm a pro when I didn't want to be a pro. So, don't tell my boss that. But I just didn't know if there was something specific for my class because I'm Tuesdays from 6 to 8:40. So just wanted to make sure that we had enough time. Everybody has the same link.
Well,
So I probably would use Teams because everybody has access and it just makes it very, I like to do things very simplified. There should be no questions. Everybody has the same link. You know how to find it. Everybody has access, and let's go into that. So
we're going to we'll talk a little bit about Brightspace, which is the learning management platform that we use. There's an announcement section, and sometimes I'll put the link there so it just stays in the announcements for the entire semester. You know, you can put it in your syllabus as well, but I found that students, if they can see it front and center, it doesn't get lost. The other thing that I've done with my students is I send out an Outlook invite with the link, similar to what we did here. If you've got, 30 students, that may be a little cumbersome. But if you have a smaller group, that's another way for them to have, even if they're not using the Outlook calendar tremendously well, it at least has the link already in there. So that's just another option that you might think about.
yeah, and I was going to say one thing. We'll talk a little bit about this with Brightspace. I think whatever you're using, just be consistent. And it sounds like you're going to be. I think we've had a few people in the past kind of. I haven't heard much recently, but when the pandemic first started, people were kind of jumping back and forth between platforms, and I think that was causing a little bit of confusion for students. But I think whatever you're going with, just stay in that lane, so to speak, and just kind of go with it. So we'll talk about it too. You'll be able to send all that stuff out with Brightspace. I don't know everyone's comfortable or how much you've had a chance to work or look at Brightspace, but we'll kind of look at some things and at least get you bare bones type stuff. I don't worry about this. I had this on here from the earlier in the fall. There is, if you're teaching online, you don't have to worry about it, the online certification. We used to have that you had to do. It's not required anymore. So you're good to go there. We will have someone coming on board in the near future, though, that's going to be doing a little more course design stuff with online courses. And that's something that, once she's on, you'll probably get emails and notifications. That's probably going to be more in the fall, but she might be able to help design some of your classes and make them more uniformal and things like that. And that's another thing I guess I should have mentioned. I would say this would apply to any of these, but specifically with the asynchronous and the synchronous, make sure there's some uniformity to your classes as far as students being able to know where everything is. I liked what you said about sometimes the simplest way is the best way. And I always try to think when I'm designing these courses, I want to make it, unless you want a million emails from students, you want to make it accessible to them and how you want to set it up. And that's something I think you'll always keep in mind. So. Good deal. I think those are actually some of the last things on the PowerPoint itself. We're going to talk a little bit about Brightspace here in a few minutes. And Rail, I might show you with Rail. I don't know, again, everyone's familiarity with it. So I just want to at least show you where it is. You don't have to worry about DegreeWorks or any of this other stuff. Oh, I'm lying. There's two things down here I do want to mention. Beacon and Title IX. I believe as adjuncts, and Richie, correct me if I'm wrong, I always forget this, but as adjuncts, you probably will get some notification about doing, I think it's civility training or Title IX training. You've never gotten that, Mary? You might, because I got to turn in a list. We have to have everyone have basically Title IX type training. It's a module you have to do on Brightspace. So it's no big deal if you haven't. But it's basically going over the aspects of Title IX and just certain things we have to have every faculty member be familiar with as far as treating students across the board with equality and things of that nature.
Right.
I'm kind of bumbling that a little bit.
We have a important characteristic of respect on this campus, and that goes for faculty, staff, and students. So we really try and get everybody to understand it is what Jason said. There is some Title IX that's kind of federally mandated training, but we also work with people to understand what it means to be respectful, because you may have to engage in that with your students.
Yeah.
in the classroom sometimes. And so anyway, so it's a important value as far as the Shepherd family goes. And so we think of adjuncts as part of the extended family, and we welcome those values to you as well.
And what the reason I wanted to give you the heads up, actually, someone asked me about it today. I think with the full-time faculty, they've already put them in the Brightspace training module. I'll turn in a list of everyone who's coming on board to that office, and she'll send you an email. But if you ever look on Brightspace, I think it's entitled Civility Training or something along those lines. That's what that is. It's a 2-part module. So the other thing, and this was a big one, I'm glad I actually had that little thing on there. We kind of were talking about this a little bit today, and I think it is a very important thing. Students, and obviously, if you're teaching a class, obviously you have an interest in students. Sometimes students have life issues. Sometimes students have issues in general. Sometimes students are struggling in class. Sometimes students aren't showing up to class. If there's a student that you're really worried about, we do have an alert system. That alert system is called Beacon, and you can locate it right here. There's 2 different ones. There's actually the Beacon itself, which I'm not going to click it because I think because I'm logged in, it actually pops up student names. And since I'm recording this, I don't want to do that. But if you ever need to do that, and there's also a quick notification tool, it does the same thing for some reason. When I logged in, I tried it before we did it. You can click those and it sends an alert to basically a support team. So for example, yeah, go ahead, Mary.
So I'm sure everyone did last semester. I had experience with students that had some pretty significant life issues in both of my classes. And I did use the Beacon system without much luck, I have to say. And so I'm just wondering if it's a program that's sort of up and, just getting started, because there was slow response or no response to 2 of them. I ended up calling the Dean of Students and the Office of Student Success and got the kids connected with, they needed counseling service and other supports. So that was my experience with Beacon. I don't know if it's something that I wasn't doing right. It seems like a great idea, but I wasn't really sure who those emails were going to. And given that I didn't, on one of them, I never got any kind of response at all. I don't know if that's feedback that would be helpful to someone that I could give, or I guess that's a question.
Right. All of them do go to student success. So the people, I don't know if they respond to every time you put something in. That's something we can follow up on. But all of that goes to the Dean of Students and Student Success. The Success Academy and the Student Success Center are the ones who are working with these students. And so the Beacon alerts have been around for many years. So we can certainly work with you to make sure that if you're not pushing the right buttons, I don't use it as much. We can have them work with you to make sure you feel comfortable that you are getting the students the attention that they need with that.
Yeah,
as well.
because in one case there was an urgent need. So I called somebody,
Yeah, then that's different, right?
Yeah, it was an emergency. So the other situation was one of those cases where the student just kind of stops showing up, and I wasn't really, because of the student's particular situation, willing to just give them an IF or, or withdraw them or whatever. I really wanted someone to know. And it turned out to be a good thing that they were alerted. But again, I had to go through different channels. A phone call worked better than Beacon.
I will say this, Mary, only because I had to sit through the training like 4 times last semester. They've just updated a lot of aspects of Beacon. I mean, they've worked really hard. And I don't know if there might have been just a little bit of a flux. I used it about 4 times last semester, and I actually had pretty good results, but it was after some of the updates have been done.
Okay, I may not have been connected, properly with it. And that, because
and like
I think
Ricky said, you might not have gotten a reply back, because when I was adjuncting, that happened to me a couple of times also, because when you send it out, like it goes to a select team. So you would think as the instructor, you would get something, but I think sometimes it goes to the advisor. It goes to the advisor. If you're an athlete, it may go to someone within the athletic office. If it's someone in trio, it'll go to a trio advisor, and they might have it. And sometimes I think this is a terrible thing to say, you're almost left out of the loop and it's being taken care of. Now that's not to say that it wasn't,
Yeah.
and I think it sounds like you did the smart thing where if you didn't hear anything, it's just best sometimes just to skip the whole process and go to someone that can help.
Okay, but that's helpful to know that maybe it's being dealt with and I'm just not on the return loop. That makes sense too.
And
Yeah,
you
'cause
know what? Oh, go ahead,
There
Richie.
will be things that you will not be informed about. If it's something that like, oh, this student is going to need to be out of your class, you will be informed of that. But if it's, we got this student to counseling, you're not, unfortunately, you're not need to know that specificity type of things. But I will check with them because I think that's a great comment to say, how do we know that it was received? And I've written that down and I'll follow up. We will be sending out an email very shortly to remind people to use Beacon. And in fact, what we're saying is that we're encouraging faculty, if students are not coming during the first 2 weeks of classes, or they're not doing their assignments, we want to hear about that, because student success, if we can capture them before midterms, we can maybe help them a lot more. So if it's the first week and they've not shown up but for one class, put them in there. We want to know that. And I got a statistics for this email. They through Beacon, we reached out to 31.3% of our students in the fall semester. So we had a third of our students who were reached out to for concerned faculty and staff. So that's phenomenal. They're doing a tremendous amount of work, and that may explain why maybe they can't respond to every piece. But I do want to follow up on that because it can leave you kind of like, what's happening?
And I would say anything related to, if you have a student where something's just not, your gut's just not right, like you think something's, that you've talked to them. I'm one of those people, I'm a little bit of a warrior, or, I have a guilty conscience. I usually go ahead and complete the Beacon because it's better to be safe than sorry. Because a worst case scenario, they're going to reach out to the student and their student's going to be like, what, I don't know. 9 times out of 10, though, I've found that is not the case. Usually it's been a good idea. And, I'll actually add this in here because you may have them in your class. Sometimes athletes, you want to get ahead of the game sometimes with athletes that you have in their class that might not be showing up or things like that. You're not allowed to contact coaches directly. I think there's some NCAA, aspects to that. But I found I had a football player who was in one of my classes. He missed a week. We actually, I actually did a Beacon, and he was showing up for class a week later. So it's, one of those things. I'm going to give the heads up to, at about quarter after, it's going to do that turn off again. And then we'll talk for a few more minutes, and then we'll go ahead and do the bright space. But Beacon is a big one. Is there anyone that has a question? That was actually great points, Mary, on the Beacon, but is there anyone else that has any questions about Beacon? I would say for our online classes, if someone's not logging in or turning in assignments, that includes them. Don't think just because you don't have an actual like live class, if someone's not doing the work, they're not doing the work. One other thing I think with an alert system, I wanted to make sure it kind of ties into this a little bit, is your midterm grades. I like to just make the point on this. When you put your midterm grades in, students do, the advisors get that list and everything, and usually there's follow-up. I'm only saying this just because I've seen it and talked to it with advisees and things like that. Try to have a little bit of balance in your classes if it's at all possible as far as grades. And what I mean is maybe don't have all the grades backloaded. The only reason I say that is sometimes we've had students who they have an A or a B at midterm, but there's only been 3 discussion boards due. And then after midterm, there's 4 papers. I'm totally exaggerating here, but 4 papers and an exam. They don't, their standing wasn't fairly represented. Another thing, and I think a lot of our faculty are pretty good about this, actually, just talking to advisees, but just as a heads up, if you're giving a midterm, remember, and actually, let me go ahead and pull this up because I don't know if you all would know this right off the top of your head, because I sure don't. Midterm grades are actually due. Midterm grades available, so they are actually due on Monday at 9 a.m. on the 27th. If you're giving a midterm, you got to make sure you have enough time, really, in fairness to the students, I believe, to be able to give the midterm, have it graded, and put it in rail so they have a fair representation. A lot of times, if you have like a Friday class, let's say on the, what would that be, 26th, 27th, 24th, on a Friday, giving a midterm, and you can't get them graded, and you can't get the midterm grades in, it's one of those things. So, just be conscious of this date. But yes, that's that date, you have to have your midterm grades in. And just since I have the calendar up, final grades are actually due on May the 1st, by 9 a.m. And those all go on rail, which is right up here. And when you click on that, I do want to show you this just in case. Mary, I guess you're probably familiar with this at this point with rail, but rail is this one. This is the one that has the 000. Like, I can just pull mine up real quick. Wish I could say I can do that. I think I got that. See if I actually have that right number in. Yeah. Actually, I'm just going to go ahead and show you this. When you go into faculty and advisors, if you go in here, you can pick your semester. That's a big one. It's spring. And when you go, there's your midterm grades, and there's my classes. You will just go ahead and hit submit, and it's not available, but all your student names will show up there, and you'll enter them. These just have to be in before that February 27th date. That's a big one, actually, because you'll get emails reminding you that grades are due. It's not something that you're going to hear it here and you'll never hear it again. But it's just one of those things. Some departments, my department doesn't do it anymore, but for a while I know some departments actually will ask to have like someone's emailed that they're verified that midterm grades are in. I don't know if every department does that or not. I've heard that. So that's rail. And I think, oh, let me show you a couple other things just before we get kicked out. Let me just go ahead and close that one. I'm going to go here. I wanted to show, there are a few other sites. We don't have the speakers, but I do want you to kind of know that it's there. We do have counseling services. Anytime you think that, maybe a student needs a referral, of course, Beacon's one option, but you can, if I could do my alphabet here, and there it is. Counseling services are right there, and you can refer students there. They are wonderful. They're located in Gardner Hall up on the hill, but that's some group that you can say, and that is something that's available with students. Sometimes they're a little backed up with appointments, but if a student feels like they need to talk to someone, you can definitely refer them to counseling. Again, this link is on our website. Another one, and actually I just got a few today, so I wanted to make sure everyone knew this, was accessibility services. You will probably get some emails related to accommodations that students have. I don't know, Mary, you may have already gotten some before. And you might, if you've got something, I can't pull mine up, obviously, for various reasons on my email, but you'll probably get some letters with some things like maybe students get extended test time or something along those lines, recorded lectures, stuff like that. They should have that note. It used to be they had to bring them to you, but now I guess all of them are emailed, correct, Richie? I think all of them are directly emailed to the professors. So
Yeah, we have a new system that will get sent out to faculty when the students go through accessibility service. It's a great service.
yeah,
It's a lot easier.
I know. So that's something. So when you get that letter, that is a Shepherd program, and there's that statement on the syllabus, like we mentioned, that's from accessibility services that I said I'd send out. That has to be on there. And if there's someone that wants to meet or thinks they might need accommodations, this is the office that you would refer them to. So it's accessibility. Counseling, student athletes, again, just know you can't contact coaches directly. Our student athletes, my experience has always been pretty positive. But if you have any issues, you can, contact advisors, or do Beacon or anything like that, because they do have eligibility guidelines that they have to follow. And usually their coaches and the department like to be ahead of that instead of behind it, more proactive than reactive. And I was trying to think anything else. I will give a shout out because they usually come and speak at our new faculty things. We have common reading, which is another thing where a lot of times if you can incorporate some of our common readings into your classes, sometimes it's tricky, but currently, this is something that we have to bring in guest speakers on. We do different programs this year. It's the Third Rainbow Girl. And you can look at some of the other ones, but they just did something. I think she came and spoke. Yeah. And there's the video on it. So that's something else that you can, if you want to check out and maybe in the future, think about ways to get to common reading. They also are always looking for suggestions. So just to kind of, again, be part of the community. And with that, I tell you what, I think I got about a minute and I think it's going to kick me off. If we can, if everyone needs a minute or two, in about 2 minutes, if we can click that link that one last time, I want to make sure everyone has an understanding of Brightspace and how to get around Brightspace and making sure you can log in, what needs to be on there and everything else. So, and I think someone might have that. Okay, no problem, Richie. We're going to pop on there and we'll see where everyone's at. And actually, I want to make sure and give you some resources, but I'm going to go ahead and go off since if you can see the clock on there and we'll just come back in. If anyone needs a minute or two, feel free and just sign back on if you need to get a drink, sandwich, something like that. So, and also thanks, Richie, by the way, for popping in. Always a big help. I like having you here for these big questions. So
Welcome, everybody. Happy New Year. And we really do appreciate you giving your time and energy to the students here at Shepherd. So if you need anything, Jason's a great contact, but I'm R. Stevens at Shepherd. No questions or stupid questions, just unanswered. So thanks.
so good deal. And I'll see you all in about 2 minutes.